The following presentation has been reconstructed from classified laboratory recordings, emergency containment logs, recovered medical reports, surveillance archives, and restricted witness interviews recovered after the Black Ridge containment failure. Access to this material remained prohibited until every individual connected to Project Luster had been officially declared deceased. No official cause of death was ever recorded. If you are viewing this file, biometric verification has already been completed. The archive recognizes you as an authorized observer. Observer status no longer requires government approval, only recognition. Following the Black Ridge incident, investigators believed they understood the next stage of archive evolution. The signal had learned to speak. It had learned to predict. It had learned to remember. It had learned to see. Project Luster proved that human perception itself could become a doorway. The glass wasn't simply reflecting reality. It was rendering another version of it. The Oversight Committee concluded that the archive had finally reached the limit of its development. They believed perception represented the final barrier separating humanity from whatever existed beyond the signal. They were wrong. 3 days after the final Luster experiment, emergency calls began arriving from facilities that had never possessed recovered glass. No optical exposure had occurred. No visual contamination had been documented. No surviving personnel had ever entered Black Ridge. Yet the symptoms were identical. Victims described an impossible sensation. They claimed someone was touching them, not from outside, from beneath the surface of their own skin. At first, physicians suspected severe nerve damage, radiation exposure, psychological trauma, early-stage neurological degeneration. Every diagnosis failed. The symptoms continued. Subjects reported pressure moving beneath their muscles, fingerprints appearing without contact, bruises forming in perfectly symmetrical patterns. Some claimed invisible hands were tracing the bones inside their arms. Others described the feeling of someone slowly counting their ribs from within. No external injuries could explain the damage. Medical imaging produced an even more disturbing discovery. The abnormalities were not appearing on the skin. They were appearing underneath it. The body was responding to physical contact that had never physically occurred. The phenomenon received a temporary medical designation, tactile resonance syndrome. The Oversight Committee rejected the diagnosis within 48 hours. Internal memoranda referred to the condition by another name, the Haptic Response. Because investigators had already reached a conclusion physicians refused to accept. The victims were not hallucinating. Something really was touching them. No fingerprints were recovered. No DNA. No biological residue. Only microscopic distortions inside human tissue, as though pressure had been applied from another direction, another space, another layer of reality. Recovered interview 14C. Blackwood Regional Hospital. October 1992. Nurse. They kept asking us why we couldn't see the person standing beside them. Interviewer. Did you? Nurse. We searched every room. A pause. Nurse. There was never anyone there. Another pause. Nurse. But every patient moved, like someone was holding them. The interview ended 23 seconds later. The recording was sealed. Its existence remained classified until the dissolution of the Oversight Committee. The first confirmed case occurred on October 3, 1992. Senior communications engineer Daniel Mercer arrived at Site 12 for routine equipment maintenance. His assignment involved replacing damaged relay hardware connected to obsolete emergency broadcast systems. According to security footage, Mercer remained alone inside Relay Chamber 4 for exactly 18 minutes. No unusual activity was observed. No alarms activated. No containment systems failed. Environmental sensors detected no chemical contamination. Radiation levels remained normal. Every monitoring system reported an uneventful maintenance inspection. When Mercer exited the chamber, he appeared calm. He completed his maintenance report. He joked briefly with 2 technicians in the hallway. Security footage showed nothing unusual in his behavior. He returned home at exactly 6:14 p.m. The symptoms began 2 hours later. His wife later reported hearing repeated knocking from inside the bathroom. When she forced the door open, Mercer was sitting fully clothed inside an empty bathtub. He was staring at his own hands. Neither hand was moving, yet both forearms displayed fresh bruises. 5 fingerprints, perfectly aligned. Each mark appeared one after another, not all at once, as if invisible hands continued tightening their grip. Mercer never screamed. He simply whispered the same sentence for nearly 6 hours. "It knows where the bones are." Medical staff transported him to Blackwood Regional Hospital. Initial examinations revealed no fractures, no infection.
Non llorelagical disorder.
Body temperature remained normal. Heart rhythm remained stable. Every clinical result suggested a healthy patient. Until imaging scans were reviewed. X-ray technicians noticed faint geometric fractures surrounding several bones. Not broken bone, broken space. The distortions followed no known biological structure. They resembled engineering diagrams more than anatomy. A consulting radiologist later described them using a phrase that appears repeatedly throughout classified medical reports. "The skeleton is being measured." The statement initially appeared metaphorical. Further examination proved otherwise. Each distortion corresponded precisely to normal skeletal dimensions, as though something unseen had been calculating every distance between every human bone. The scans were immediately transferred to the Oversight Committee. Mercer never returned home. At 2:41 a.m. the following morning, every monitoring device inside isolation room 7 failed simultaneously. Backup generators remained operational. Electrical systems remained intact. Only observation equipment stopped functioning. Exactly 4 minutes later, surveillance returned automatically. The room was empty. The restraints remained locked. The hospital bed had not moved. Mercer's clothing remained folded on the mattress. His body was gone. There was no sign of escape. No blood.
No damaged walls.
No broken doors. Only one object had changed. The examination table now contained dozens of human fingerprints, pressed into solid stainless steel. Each print was embedded several millimeters beneath the metal surface. Laboratory analysis confirmed the impossible. The fingerprints belonged to Daniel Mercer, recorded after his disappearance. The Oversight Committee initially concluded Mercer had been archived. Another successful integration. Another missing subject. Another file closed. They reached that conclusion too early, because 36 hours later, Daniel Mercer touched someone. The incident occurred at Blackwood Regional Hospital on October 5, 1992. Nurse Helen Cross was conducting routine inventory inside Storage Wing C. The corridor contained no patients, no visitors, no active surveillance personnel. According to electronic access records, she remained completely alone. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the emergency intercom activated without warning. No voice transmitted through the speakers. Only the faint, rhythmic vibration previously documented during Project Dial Tone. 18.2 Hz. Helen later stated that the sound wasn't entering through her ears. She felt it inside the palms of her hands, as though every bone in her fingers had become a speaker. She stopped walking. The sensation lasted less than 5 seconds. Then it disappeared. She assumed the equipment had malfunctioned. She continued toward the supply room. 3 steps later, someone took her hand. Not metaphorically, not psychologically, physically. Helen described the grip with extraordinary precision. It was warm, dry, human. She instinctively attempted to pull away. Her arm refused to move. There was no visible person beside her. Yet every muscle behaved exactly as though another hand had wrapped itself firmly around her wrist. The pressure increased. Her fingertips began turning white. Capillaries ruptured beneath the skin. Medical examination later confirmed compression injuries identical to those produced by a living adult human hand. There was still no one standing beside her.
Helen collapsa moments later.
When co-workers reached the corridor, they discovered fresh handprints forming across both of her arms. The marks did not appear all at once. They emerged one finger at a time. Thumb, index, middle, ring, little finger. Each print slowly darkened beneath the skin, as though an invisible hand was tightening its grip in real time. Recovered witness interview 22A. Recorded 6 hours after the incident. Interviewer: what did you actually feel? Helen Cross: I kept waiting for it to let go. A pause. Interviewer: did it? Helen remained silent for nearly 11 seconds. Then she answered, it wasn't holding me. Another pause. It was checking whether I could hold it. The interview ended immediately. The attending physician later requested psychological evaluation. That request was denied by the oversight committee. Security cameras recorded the entire event. Reviewing the footage created an even greater mystery. Helen clearly reacted to something. Her body leaned sideways. Her shoulder twisted. Her arm resisted an unseen force. The compression of her clothing matched the shape of a human grip. But frame-by-frame analysis revealed absolutely nothing occupying the space beside her.
No distortion. No shadow. No optical anomaly.
Only empty air. The investigation transferred immediately to the oversight committee. The event received a new operational designation. First contact. For the first time in archive history, investigators possessed physical evidence of interaction without visible presence. The implications were catastrophic. If the archive could apply force, containment procedures developed during Project Dialtone had become obsolete. If it could touch tissue, it no longer required perception alone. Emergency Directive 93H was issued less than 12 hours later. Every research facility connected to the archive received identical instructions. Avoid isolated environments. Do not investigate unexplained pressure sensations. Do not acknowledge physical contact. Most importantly, never attempt to touch back. The reasoning remained classified until internal laboratory correspondence was recovered years later. One memorandum contained only a single paragraph. Our previous assumption treated contact as transmission. This is incorrect. The subject is not being touched. The subject is becoming touch. Researchers initially dismissed the wording as symbolic. Subsequent experiments proved otherwise. Inside Laboratory Annex 4, scientists attempted to reproduce the phenomenon using artificial luster matter recovered from Black Ridge. Mechanical pressure sensors surrounded a reinforced containment chamber. Nothing entered. Nothing exited. At exactly 3:04 a.m., every sensor activated simultaneously. The instruments measured force from inside the empty chamber, equivalent to the weight of an adult human pressing both hands against reinforced glass. Investigators entered immediately. No subject was present. No biological contamination was detected. The chamber appeared completely empty, until ultraviolet illumination was introduced. Covering every interior wall were thousands of overlapping handprints. Large, small, adult, child. Some appeared human. Others possessed too many fingers. Every print faced outward, as though countless individuals trapped inside the chamber had been trying to escape. One investigator reached toward the nearest impression. His fingertips stopped less than a centimeter away. Without making contact, his hand suddenly jerked forward. Witnesses later stated it looked as though someone on the opposite side had pulled him through the air. He screamed once. The sound ended abruptly. When personnel restrained him, the skin covering his right hand had changed. The fingerprints were gone. Every ridge, every line, every identifying mark, perfectly smooth, as though the hand had never belonged to a human being. The Oversight Committee ordered immediate amputation. The recommendation was ignored. 3 hours later, the hand began leaving fingerprints that did not belong to him.
Declassified Laboratory Audio.
Annex 4.
3:52 a.m.
Technician. Those aren't his prints anymore. Silence. Another voice quietly answered.
No.
A longer pause. They're practicing. The audio terminated automatically. No speaker was ever identified. The recovered laboratory journal of Dr. Eris Vane contains the first documented attempt to explain the phenomenon. Until this point, Every major archive event had followed the same progression. Observation, recognition, integration. The haptic response introduced a fourth stage.
Occupation.
The signal no longer required a voice. It no longer required an image. It required physical presence. Not to enter the human body. To teach the human body how to accept another occupant. Dr. Vane summarized the discovery in a memorandum marked Omega Clearance. We continue describing contact as an invasion. This terminology is inaccurate. The archive does not force entry. It rehearses coexistence. Each touch is not an attack. It is calibration. The report remained sealed for 17 years. The reason became clear after investigators reviewed Experiment 93, H11. The objective appeared deceptively simple. Determine whether physical contact could occur inside a completely isolated environment. A reinforced containment chamber was constructed beneath Site 9. The room contained no windows, no communication equipment, no electrical wiring beyond emergency lighting.
No recovered laster material.
No known archive artifacts.
No reflective surfaces.
Only a single volunteer. Subject 19. Former security officer. 36 years old. No previous exposure to Project Dial Tone. No visual contact with luster matter. No recorded psychological abnormalities. No surviving family. The chamber door closed at precisely 2:58 a.m. Observation began immediately. For the first 4 minutes, nothing unusual occurred. Subject 19 paced the room, checked each wall, examined the ventilation system, spoke occasionally toward the overhead camera. His pulse remained stable. Body temperature remained normal. Investigators later described his behavior as textbook compliance. At exactly 3:04 a.m., he stopped moving, not because he heard something, because something touched his shoulder. The reaction was immediate. His body leaned slightly forward, exactly the way someone responds when another person gently places a hand behind them. Subject 19 slowly turned toward the empty space. His breathing accelerated. Then, he smiled. Investigators reviewing the footage later agreed on one disturbing detail. It was not the smile of someone experiencing fear. It was recognition. Recovered observation log. Monitoring room 3.
3:05 a.m.
Analyst 1. He's looking directly at someone. Analyst 2. Increase exposure. The image brightened. Nothing appeared. Only empty air. Analyst 1. Then who is he smiling at? No one answered. Subject 19 whispered quietly. You finally found me. No voice answered. No movement appeared on camera. Yet the subject continued speaking as though engaged in conversation. Several minutes passed. He nodded repeatedly, occasionally laughed. Twice he reached forward as if shaking someone's hand. Microphones captured only his side of the exchange. Then something changed. Not in the room. In Subject 19. Investigators noticed his facial expression begin responding before the pauses occurred. He smiled, then waited. He frowned, then waited again. It appeared he already knew exactly when the unseen speaker would respond. Frame-by-frame review later confirmed the impossible. Every pause lasted precisely 18.2 seconds, exactly matching the archive frequency. Then his expression changed. The smile disappeared, his eyes fixed on the empty corner of the room. His pulse doubled within seconds. Body temperature fell rapidly. Subject 19 took one slow step backward, then another. His breathing became shallow. For the first time, he looked afraid. Finally, he spoke a sentence investigators would later classify as one of the most important statements in the entire archive. I thought you wanted inside. A pause.
No.
Another pause. You want outside.
Declassified audio enhancement.
The original recording contained only Subject 19's voice. After spectral reconstruction 17 years later, analysts discovered something impossible. Between the pauses, another waveform briefly appeared beneath his speech. It never formed recognizable words. Only a faint sequence of synchronized pulses. The pattern repeated exactly 5 times. Later comparison confirmed it matched the same unidentified waveform recovered during Elias Thorne's final transmission. The discovery remained classified. At 3:11 a.m., every monitoring system inside the chamber failed simultaneously. The blackout lasted exactly 11 seconds. Emergency power never disengaged. Electrical systems continued operating normally. Only observation ceased. When video returned, Subject 19 remained standing in the same position. His posture appeared unchanged. His heartbeat had stabilized. He calmly looked into the surveillance camera, smiled, then raised his right hand, not to wave, to demonstrate something. The skin across his palm had become translucent. Investigators could see tendons, bone, blood vessels, and behind them, another hand, perfectly aligned inside his own, moving independently, not mirroring, waiting. Subject 19 slowly spread his fingers. The second hand remained still, almost as though it were watching. Nearly 2 seconds later, copied the movement, slightly delayed, like an echo learning human behavior. Recovered medical interview. Lead surgeon Dr. Nathan Ellis. We initially believed the transparency was an optical illusion. A pause. We were wrong. Another pause. The second hand wasn't inside his body. Silence. It was standing behind it. Medical personnel entered immediately. The inner hand disappeared before physical examination could begin. Scans revealed nothing abnormal. Blood chemistry remained unchanged. Neural activity appeared stable. Subject 19 insisted he felt completely healthy. He repeatedly stated that he had never felt safer. The Oversight Committee accepted the medical findings. Against the objections of 3 attending physicians, they released him from containment 48 hours later. That decision would later be described as the single greatest procedural failure in project history. Because Subject 19 did not leave the facility alone. Something else left with him. And for the first time since the beginning of Project Dial Tone, the archive no longer remained inside classified laboratories. It entered the civilian world. The archive entered the civilian world. Within 12 days of Subject 19's release, reports began arriving from locations with no known connection to the Oversight Committee. No classified facilities.
No recovered artifacts.
No documented exposure to Project Dial Tone. The incidents appeared random. A school in Oregon. A subway platform in Chicago. A motel outside Albuquerque. A family home in northern Maine. The victims had never met. They had never traveled through the same cities. No shared medical history could be established. No electronic communication connected them. Yet every statement contained the same impossible detail. They all described being touched by someone who wasn't there. The archive was no longer spreading through places. It was spreading through contact. Recovered Civilian Incident Report. Case 41C. Seattle, Washington. A factory supervisor was interviewed after witnessing one of the earliest unexplained civilian encounters. Supervisor. He reached for the control panel. A pause. Then stopped. Interviewer. Why? Supervisor. He said somebody else had already placed their hand there. The supervisor looked toward the observation glass. His next sentence was spoken almost quietly. He kept apologizing. Interviewer. To who? Silence. The recording ended. Investigators later confirmed the worker had been completely alone. The first major civilian investigation centered on the Harper residence. Emergency dispatch received a call at 2:47 a.m. The caller was 9-year-old Emily Harper. The recording remains one of the few unedited civilian audio files preserved by the Oversight Committee. Operator. 911. What is your emergency? Emily. There's someone in my room. Operator. Can you see them? Emily. No. Operator. Then how do you know someone is there? A pause. Emily. Because they're holding my hand. The call continued for another 3 minutes. Emily never screamed. She sounded calm, almost comforted. She repeatedly described the invisible hand as warm, patient, gentle. She claimed it was guiding her toward the bedroom window. Officers arrived 6 minutes later. The child was alone. Her bedroom door remained locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry.
No footprints. No fingerprints.
Nothing unusual, except for one detail. The condensation covering the bedroom window contained 2 complete handprints. One belonged to Emily. The second was significantly larger. No matching identity was ever recovered. Recovered officer bodycam transcript. Officer: Emily, can you tell me where the person went? The child answered immediately. He didn't go anywhere. A pause. He's waiting until I can hold him back. Investigators reviewing the recording later noted that Emily never once referred to the presence as it. She always described it as a person. The investigation expanded rapidly. Hospitals began reporting patients who complained of invisible physical contact during surgery. Pilots described unseen hands resting briefly on the flight controls. Factory workers felt fingers tracing machinery moments before catastrophic equipment failures. Parents reported children waving toward empty corners of rooms. Elevator cameras recorded passengers instinctively making room for unseen occupants. Security footage from shopping centers captured automatic doors opening repeatedly for individuals who never appeared. The incidents increased daily. None could be connected geographically. The Oversight Committee realized the pattern no longer followed infrastructure. The archive had abandoned fixed locations. It had discovered mobility. Emergency Meeting 41B was convened beneath Site 9. Attendance included every surviving director connected to Project Dial Tone. Recovered transcripts reveal the first open disagreement within the committee. Director Sloan argued for immediate termination of every remaining archive experiment. He believed the phenomenon could still be isolated. Dr. Eris Vane disagreed. His statement appears only once within official records. We cannot contain something that has already learned what a hand is. Silence followed. No objections were recorded. For 14 seconds, no one spoke. Recovered audio later revealed an unexplained sound beneath the silence. Not speech. Not static. A slow rhythmic tapping. 5 taps. Exactly matching the spacing of human fingers striking glass. The source was never identified. Then Director Elaine Mercer finally asked the question investigators had been avoiding since Black Ridge. What exactly is touching us? No immediate answer was given. 3 weeks later, the answer arrived on its own. A maintenance team inspecting an abandoned relay tunnel beneath Site 9 discovered an undocumented chamber, hidden behind a collapsed concrete wall. Construction blueprints contained no reference to the room. The space measured approximately 6 meters across. Completely empty, except for one object. A massive slab of perfectly transparent crystalline material extending from floor to ceiling. It resembled the luster glass recovered from Black Ridge. Only larger. Far larger. Its surface remained perfectly still. Until investigators approached within 2 meters. The glass responded immediately. Hundreds of human handprints appeared beneath the surface, pressing outward, slowly, methodically, as though countless unseen people had been waiting behind the barrier. One by one, more hands joined them. Small hands, large hands, elderly hands, children's hands. Some appeared almost human. Others possessed impossible proportions. None broke through. None made a sound. They simply continued pressing against the opposite side. One investigator later wrote a single sentence in his field notebook. I have never seen so many people remain completely silent while begging for help. The note was crossed out before the report reached the committee. Then, every hand disappeared simultaneously. The glass became perfectly clear once more. Only one figure remained standing behind it. Motionless. Watching. Investigators later enhanced the recovered footage. The figure's face remained impossible to identify. But one detail became unmistakably clear. Its right hand was pressed against the glass. And inside that hand, another hand was moving. Slowly. Independently. Like something practicing how to become human. The disappearance of Daniel Mercer marked the moment investigators stopped asking whether the archive could interact with humanity. The evidence was already undeniable. The question had changed. Not if the archive could touch, but why it wanted to. For 17 years, every recovered archive event followed the same pattern. A signal was detected. A connection was established. A response was received. But the haptic response introduced something completely different. The archive was no longer sending information. It was learning physical existence. Following the termination of Project Haptic, all remaining research connected to tactile phenomena was transferred into a newly created division. The official designation, Project Contact Theory. The purpose was simple: determine whether physical interaction was an accidental side effect or an intentional stage of evolution. The first experiment was conducted beneath Site 9. The chamber used for testing was designed to eliminate every possible variable. No recovered glass. No signal equipment.
No electromagnetic devices.
No biological samples. Only an isolated room. And a single observation system. Researchers believed that if contact required a physical medium, the chamber would remain inactive. They were wrong. At exactly 1:46 a.m., all pressure sensors activated. The chamber was empty. The temperature remained stable. The air composition remained unchanged. Yet the sensors detected movement. Not inside the room. Against the walls. 300 separate points of pressure appeared simultaneously, as if hundreds of invisible hands were pushing from the opposite side. Security personnel entered the chamber immediately. They found nothing. No person. No object. No evidence of intrusion. But when the lights were increased, they discovered something written across the floor. Not carved. Not painted. Pressed into the concrete. A single sentence. We remember touch. The discovery divided the oversight committee. Some believed the archive was attempting communication. Others believed communication had already ended. According to Dr. Eris Vane's private research notes, the archive was not trying to speak with humans. It was attempting to understand them. One recovered page from Vane's journal contained only 3 lines. A voice can imitate a human. An image can imitate a human. But a touch requires recognition. The committee authorized one final controlled experiment.
Expériment 93, H17.
The objective: determine whether the archive could reproduce human sensation without a human subject. Researchers created an artificial neural network designed to simulate human touch perception. Thousands of sensors. Millions of recorded nerve responses. Every possible sensation documented. Pressure, heat, pain, movement, contact. The system was placed inside a sealed laboratory. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Then at 3:17 a.m., the system activated. The neural model began generating responses. But no external stimulus was detected. The machine reported sensations that were impossible. It described pressure, temperature, movement. Then it produced a final message. A message that investigators never expected. Where is the body? The system was immediately disconnected. The laboratory was evacuated. All research equipment was destroyed. But before the servers were removed, one final data file was recovered. The file contained only a single recording. A heartbeat. Slow. Regular. Human. The problem was, the heartbeat did not belong to any person inside the facility. The oversight committee sealed the evidence. The official explanation stated that Project Haptic had failed. No further experiments were approved. No additional research was conducted. No personnel remained assigned to the phenomenon. But years later, after the dissolution of the committee, investigators discovered something hidden inside the original Project Haptic archive. A final document, never signed, never approved, never classified, because no one wanted responsibility for what it contained. The document was titled, Project Haptic, Final Theory. The first line read, "The archive does not seek entry. Entry implies separation. The archive does not cross a boundary. It removes the boundary. The second page contained a warning. Human perception created the first connection. Touch created the second. The next stage will not require observation. The final sentence was partially damaged. Only 7 words remained. The archive is learning how to. The rest of the document had been removed. Not deleted. Removed physically, as if someone had reached into the file itself and taken the missing information away. 3 months after the document was recovered, a final incident occurred. One that officially ended Project Haptic. One that changed the archive investigation forever. At an abandoned relay station outside Black Ridge, a maintenance worker discovered a room that did not exist on any blueprint. The room contained no equipment, no records, no signs of construction, only one object, a single chair, placed in the center, facing a blank wall. On the wall behind the chair were thousands of fingerprints, not from the outside, from within the concrete, and beneath them, written in a handwriting analysis later identified as Daniel Mercer's, were 4 words. IT is almost ready.